Welcome back, rookie. Come sit a spell. Last time we talked about werewolves, and I promised I'd talk about vampires this time. See, vampires are enigmatic creatures that have just fascinated and terrified the human race for centuries. Although variations exist across different vampire lore and legends, we're going to be focusing on just two of the main ones this time. I'm going to be talking about what I call the Bram Stoker Dracula type, or classic, and I'll refer to him hereafter as classic, and the Nosferatu. Classic vampires have a pale complexion, often extremely pale, even borderline translucent. Their lack of blood circulation gives them a deathly pallor. Their fangs are elongated canine teeth. These are used to puncture the skin to feed. Their eyes can range from a deep crimson to a piercing icy blue. They can use this to mesmerize their victims. This, combined with a more elegant appearance that appears to reflect a timeless beauty or handsomeness, allows them to charm and seduce their prey. Many victims, in my experience, tend to report feeling drawn to them. Others may report memory loss, which would contribute to the general idea that classics rely on mind control to make their victims more susceptible to their advances. One way to determine the kind of vampire you're dealing with is the bite structure. If the bite is clean and you only find 2 puncture marks, more than likely you'll be dealing with a classic. Where it may get a little muddied is if you're dealing with animals. The chupacabra has a similar bite structure to a classic, so just keep that in mind. I have seen where classics have hunted animals rather than humans, but it almost threw me for a loop thinking it was a chupacabra instead. You can generally find a lot of the classics rooted deep in old money from Europe, though some have made their way over to North and South America for new starts. Not all vampires are inherently evil, and not all vampires are ruthlessly murdering innocent people. In fact, there have been a few cases where we've been dispatched to deal with the problem, and we've managed to negotiate terms with that particular vampire. They'll show up to our branch offices and are given blood bags to satiate them so that they aren't hunting humans, and when they run out, they return for more, and they'll operate within the means of society. And they've even helped us in a few cases search out and capture newly created vampires or the more feral subspecies. Now the Nosferatu, they're more grotesque and animalistic than their classic cousins. They can also be referred to as revenants. Their skin is also pale, but it's more sickly, resembling a corpse than just an incredibly pallid individual. Their ears are elongated to a point, their teeth are sharp and crooked, some have a more rat-like appearance, holding elongated incisors and a rat-like snout, while others just have a pronounced hooked nose. I've seen both. We're not sure if it's a distinguishing feature of biology or a subspecies. They tend to use shadows to hunt their prey. They've done well as ambush predators, utilizing their monstrous appearance and terrifying presence to incapacitate their victims. Their bites are more jagged, more for ripping and tearing than focusing on a clean feeding. There have also been instances where we found bite marks mimicking that of a lamprey, but I haven't had the pleasure of experiencing those. However, due to the nature of the Nosferatu, you may also second-guess yourself on the bite structure as they mimic ghouls in their biting patterns, or vice versa. There was one instance, however, that a Nosferatu had managed to mimic a classic in its bite structure. It was a little bit more recently where there was a case I was called in for that had evidence that suggested a vampire. Out near Boston, a string of serial killings had been enough to notify MIA of something strange. Victims on the extreme side had been fully exsanguinated, and on the not so extreme, they were sickly, dazed, confused. Likely just from the blood loss. Looking back in hindsight, the investigative team had been able to determine a pattern to the behavior, keeping the attacks to women from the ages of 25 to 30 within a 20-mile radius of a particular graveyard. Common wounds were puncture marks in a twin pattern, usually on the neck, but not uncommon to be found elsewhere. That's where I had made my mistake. I traveled to the graveyard during the day, but the sun was quickly setting, and I didn't have a lot of time to work with. The feeling around the graveyard was heavy and oppressive. Further, I was definitely being watched. Or at least the feeling just gnawed at me. After searching the graveyard, I did eventually find foot traffic going down into a mausoleum. The vampires being as dangerous as they are, I called for backup and alerted our dispatcher that I was investigating this particular mausoleum and to send backup as soon as possible. I entered and continued my investigation. The vaults within this mausoleum were shut tight until I found a door broken down further in. Following the evidence, I found my quarry. Shrouded in darkness, adorned with ancient symbols of the undead carved into the coffin. It acted as a sanctuary for the vampire to rest by day and stalk their prey by night. I got lucky and caught it sleeping. And if I didn't act fast and stake it, I would be in a world of hurt. I pulled a stake, reared back, and slammed down as hard as I could, driving the stake into its heart. Unfortunately, it was around here that I had realized my mistake and found it to be a Nosferatu rather than a classic, as I had originally thought. It was able to writhe and wriggle out of the way and bring the fight back to me. It landed a couple blows on me, digging its claws into my soft tissue. The strength it held, despite being dazed, gave me cause to retreat back to the safety of sunlight while it was still in the sky. Sunlight, wooden stakes, holy water. Holy water. I had remembered that I had packed a vial in my satchel, so I swung around, uncorked the vial of holy water, and splashed it into the Nosferatu's face, and it screeched in pain. I noticed the stake was still protruding from its chest, and in a moment of bravado, I'm not entirely sure what came over me, I bull rushed the Nosferatu and took it down like a linebacker would in football. American football, anyway. With enough force, I was then able to get the stake shoved further into its chest. It screeched and screamed in pain as it exploded into ash and dust. My job was done. But I didn't leave that fight unscathed. With backup showing up about then, my adrenaline fell off, and I lost consciousness. I was told later I was out for about a week due to the blood loss and trauma. I was ordered to take a vacation after that, and I was glad to. Vampires, in and of themselves, are dangerous and intelligent. The intelligence of these creatures must not be underestimated. Classics can be reasoned with, and in most cases, they'll go without a fight in order to maintain their self-preservation. Just don't mistake that for weakness, as they can absolutely break you in half if they really wanted to. They're predators, in the manner a lion is a predator. Use your head, and you'll be just fine. And that was a hard reminder for me. But you're doing pretty well, rookie. Keep up your studies. Update your journal. Meet with me again, and I'll tell you some ghost stories. Be safe out there.